Hey everyone, Doug here with B&H. Today we're going to take a look at the brand new LG Ultrafine Display OLED Pro. I'm a big fan of OLEDs myself, but the technology has been surprisingly absent from computer monitors. Until now. At 31.5 inches, it's a gorgeous 4K HDR display, but it should be clear that this monitor is intended for professional use. It comes factory calibrated, supports wide color gamuts, and even offers hardware calibration, meaning you can store your calibrations away from a computer. Though you could use it for other applications, the lack of variable refresh rates, card slots, or high peak brightness mean that this is really ideal for accurate broadcast color grading, photo editing, and graphic design. So, OLED, for those out of the loop, stands for Organic Light Emitting Diode, and it's been around for the last few years, but it's mostly been limited to TVs and smartphone displays. OLED displays are self-emitting, which means they don't require a backlight to produce color. This means OLEDs have perfect black reproduction, as the pixels are literally turned off when displaying black. Every bit of content benefits from this though, with deeper, richer shades, and in dark scenes or photos in particular, they come to life in ways that you may not be used to on a typical LCD screen. It's also an HDR display with Display HDR True Black 400 certification, getting brighter for HDR content while maintaining that infinite contrast ratio and providing a much better viewing experience than comparable HDR 400 LCD panels. As a UHD 4K display, the image here is crisp and clear, and at nearly 32 inches, it simply looks astonishing. Everything from the desktop display to actual video content is immersive. The Ultrafine OLED Pro runs at 60 Hz, which is standard for most monitors, and the lack of variable refresh rate support will rule this out for most gamers. Of course, a monitor like this isn't intended for that, so it's not really expected to have a gaming feature. All three of the connection types, USB-C, DisplayPort, and HDMI, support 4K at 60p. OLED is something that really needs to be seen in person to be appreciated. The black levels are very hard to compare under normal lighting conditions, but where OLEDs really shine is in low light settings, which is exactly where a monitor like this is likely going to live. Most professional users will understand the importance of controlling the light when seeking color accuracy. Watch what happens when I display a pure black image on the screen in a pitch black room. Now, compare that to these two LCD screens on my desk. They've both been calibrated to about 140 nits, which is a little brighter than the recommended 120, but regardless, displaying a truly black image is literally impossible for them. Now, as for a real-world example though, check out these shots of a night sky. Each individual star pops out on the OLED thanks to its incredibly deep black levels. OLEDs also have perfect viewing angles from every side. The color won't shift or dim as you move from side to side, much like it would with an LCD. This isn't just better for you in post, but it's better for any client who could be viewing maybe slightly off axis from where you are. They'll see what you see. HDR is another feature that, as I've said many times before, is impossible to really demonstrate on camera. HDR10 is supported on the device, and it's easy enough to engage on an operating system level as well, but the monitor will also detect HDR signals from broadcast devices. One thing that's important to mention is the peak brightness. In SDR modes, the maximum brightness is 250 nits. But in HDR, the display can hit up to 540 nits, giving it the additional brightness to show stunning highlights and brighter colors. While this admittedly isn't as bright as other OLED HDR TVs, it does blow away similarly bright LCD screens, which don't have the benefits of local dimming. Now, to be honest, I've yet to see an LCD computer monitor that genuinely makes use of HDR, but the results here are just beautiful. Now, given the available color gamut here in an OLED display, it makes sense that there are several color space options in the monitor's presets. For standard desktop computer use, there is of course an sRGB mode, but there's also BT709 for broadcast SDR signals. You'll notice a BT2020 setting, which is a wide gamut SDR setting, along with P3D65, which might be useful for theatrical grading. Below those are HDR PQ versions of those presets. And finally, there's an Adobe RGB preset for photographers. But what about the calibration setting? The Ultrafine OLED Pro actually comes calibrated out of the box. even including a printed calibration report. But it's still generally good practice to do your own calibration regardless. You can use LG's Calibration Studio program to set the calibration target for the display, including gamut, brightness, color temperature, and gamma. The best feature here though when it comes to calibration is the fact that the calibration is stored in hardware, meaning you can use it away from a computer. For on-set and studio work, this is simply an incredible feature to have. Being a computer monitor, you do get a little more connectivity here than you would with a TV. The main video connections here are a single USB-C 3.1 port, 2 DisplayPort 1.4 ports, and 1 HDMI 2.0 port. There's also 3 USB 3.1 Type A ports intended for peripheral connections, and a USB Type B connection, which goes straight to the computer. Below that, you'll see a 3.5mm headphone jack and the DC input. The base, what can I say, is well articulated and is essentially on a ball joint. This allows the monitor to rotate to a vertical orientation if you want, along with tilting up and down. The base does take up a decent amount of space, but it's understandable given the size of the screen. Fortunately, with the monitor being as light as it is, the base itself also doesn't weigh too much. Speaking of, with the base, the monitor weighs 11.7 pounds or 5.3 kilograms, and without the base, it's only 8.4 pounds or 3.8 kilograms. So despite the 32-inch size, it's probably easier to mount this on a monitor arm than a comparable LCD screen. And yes, in case you were wondering, there is a VESA mount on the back. So that's it for the OLED Ultrafine Display OLED Pro, a unique, brand new display that brings OLED technology to the desktop space. Of course, you can also use this as a dedicated grading screen, editing monitor, or something to preview while you're on set. It serves a variety of purposes, and with the hardware calibration, you should be set in any circumstance. I'm Doug with B&H, and I'll see you next time.